So we're very lucky to have Mary and Martin with us today, and they're going to talk. Mary's going to tell us a bit about her story after her diagnosis, and we're really going to focus on how beneficial Mary found rehabilitation after her surgery and how she's got on since then. So Mary, if it's okay, you might just tell us a bit about your story, how we got to this point.
Yes, certainly. My story starts the Saturday before last Christmas, when I suddenly found that I couldn't really write on the gift tags properly. And when I mentioned it to Martin, he laughed and he said, "Oh, well, your writing was never much good because you were a GP," which was true. But then on the Monday after that, so that's the Monday before Christmas, I went swimming and had a brief episode in the pool where they were trying to move the lane markers and I couldn't get out of the way, and I briefly found myself under the water. But it passed and I managed to get out of the pool and went to the change rooms, got dressed, drove myself home. But I was quite shaken by that. And then, because we were due to go to Kenya, I thought I'd better phone the GP and talk to him about getting some tests done to check me out, because I wanted to be able to get medical insurance going abroad, which all sounds quite funny now in retrospect. But that was the driver for contacting the GP. And of course, because it was just before Christmas, it was difficult to get in touch with the GP. And then what then happened over the next week to 10 days was that I developed a rapidly progressing right-sided paralysis. And with the help of the GP, I then went and saw a neurologist who then arranged a scan. And that was done on the 2nd of January. And then on the evening of the 2nd of January, the consultant phoned me and told me that I'd got a malignant brain tumour. I said to her, "Oh, well, thank goodness for that. Thank goodness it's not motor neurone disease," because my dad had died of motor neurone disease. And that had been a terrible thing to see. And I think that had been my greatest fear, really. So after that, I then went and saw the neurologist, and she put me on some steroids, which had a dramatic effect from the first dose, really, and the paralysis gradually got better. And then I had a consultation with the neurosurgeon, and he recommended that I should have surgery. And so I went into King's and was told that I'd only be in for 3 or 4 days. But was warned that I might, if I was very unlucky, have more in the way of neurological symptoms after the surgery. Because sometimes having surgery of that sort puts the surrounding neurons into shock, was how it was explained to me. But you never think it's going to happen to you. You assume, having been told that it'll be all right and you'll be out of hospital in 3 or 4 days, that's what will happen. But actually, when I came round from the anaesthetic, I couldn't move my right side and I couldn't speak either. And I've been one of the unfortunate ones who ended up with rather more in the way of symptoms than I'd gone into the surgery with. So that was all a bit of a shock and very frightening, particularly the not being able to talk was horrible, because that meant, well, you can tell what happened from your side of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, same as Mary, I was expecting her to be up and about fairly quickly, and then obviously when I went to visit her, she wasn't, and there was clearly something wrong. But obviously the medical teams had told Mary what was wrong, but she couldn't relay that on to me. So I was sitting there very perplexed. It was clear that it hadn't gone to plan. How bad it was or whatever, I couldn't work out. And but eventually we did manage to nail somebody who came and explained to me what he had already explained to Mary. So it clarified the position. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
So I spent 2.5 weeks in
Yeah.
King's and had some treatment, and then at that stage, I mean, a lot of it I don't really remember, I have to say, but I do remember things like being very frustrated because when the meals came round, of course, unless I was correctly positioned and the meal was close enough, I couldn't actually reach to, because I couldn't move. And I remember the speech therapist came and she said, she was trying to get me to talk, and she said, oh, I could do some pictures if you want. What do you want a picture of? And then so I said, oh, about this thing about the meals, and she said, oh, I can do you a picture for that. So she did, and that sort of sorted that one out, and also a picture for things like wanting to go to the toilet and so on, because it's terribly frustrating when you can't speak.
But you're so aware of what's going on as well, which is
absolutely
even more frustrating. Yeah,
you could understand everything, but I just couldn't talk. At least, I mean, initially not at all, and then when the speech started to come back, it wasn't fluent, so I couldn't say something quickly. So that was the worst bit, I think. And then after 2.5 weeks, then got me transferred to the rehab unit at Orpington.
And just to interrupt, the day that was scheduled to happen was the day that we had one of the great hurricanes that brought down all the trees. And so I was convinced that somebody at King's would do some form of risk assessment and then tell Mary that she couldn't possibly travel between King's and Orpington Hospital in those terrible conditions, but somehow miraculously somebody turned up and collected her and took her over there. So
Yeah.
Probably a good place to be in an ambulance, isn't it, during a hurricane?
Yeah, that's right.
All those branches of trees and things coming down. But anyway, so
but we made it anyway. And then, having got to Orpington, they were very, very kind at Orpington, I have to say, and the rehab there, the team was absolutely lovely. So I had more speech therapy there and more physio, but the whole thing was complicated by the fact I kept getting urine infections because I've got a catheter, and so each time I had a urine infection, and that set me back. But anyway, after 2.5 weeks, you managed to persuade people that I ought to go home.
Yeah, I think we just reached the point where we felt that Mary was going to recover better at home in her own environment than she was going to in hospital. With that, I mean, she could continue to get even better, if that's the right word, being at home. It's where you wanted to be, in a way, just desperate to get back and to have some sort of normality around her. So
do you remember? Sorry, Martin, interrupted you then. Carry on.
Yeah, we just.
No, I was just. Both being polite.
Very hard to get her back home, and the team in Orpington were brilliant at arranging all the things that were needed in terms of a care package to get Mary home efficiently and safely. So yeah, so that's in the end what we managed to do. So.
And I was just going to say, Mary, do you remember us all saying to you it's going to improve?
Yes, I do, but I don't think. I mean, I sort of believed you, but it was difficult to imagine.
Absolutely.
That it would get any better, really, or that it would get a lot better, and even that it would get any better.
I remember driving home after visiting Mary and saying, I've heard everybody saying exactly that, but I'm not sure it's true. And then I was thinking, But I think all the medical teams these days have to tell you the truth. They can't give you that, like they probably did in the old days, give you the story they wanted you to hear. So I had to keep reconciling it and say, no, they have to tell you these days that, if it's not going to be good news, they have to tell you. They can't hide it and pretend it's good news. So we hung on to that, didn't we?
Yeah,
so
we did.
But I think we decided that home was where you wanted to be, regardless of whether it was good or bad news, I suppose, wasn't it? So,
yeah. So I came and had carers in 4 times a day, and friends and family took turns in coming and sleeping in the room with me at night, so that Martin could get some rest. And the church were very good. They did a meal rota for the first 2 weeks that I was home, so we didn't have to think about that at all. And so having got home, the community physios and OT then became involved, and they were absolutely superb, weren't they?
Outstanding.
Because to start with, I couldn't even get out of bed on my own. I had to have somebody there to help me. And Martin, when the physios came in, they said to Martin, well, what's your goal? And he said, to get Mary into the car. And they said, they didn't say, oh, that's. I
thought they would say, you're absolutely mad. There's no way Mary's going to be able to do that, or she'll fall over, or that would be too risky, because we've got steps outside our house and all sorts of things. And the physio said, that's fine, that's a good goal, let's go for it. And I thought, wow, amazing. I think I can get on with these people. It was can do, and it encouraged a belief that you could do it, and you knew that they were working to the same goals. There wasn't any, that's too dangerous, or it might, they were willing to, they recognised, said afterwards that it's clearly a degree of risk that Mary might fall over or whatever, but you weren't going to make the improvement without, to some extent, taking some controlled risks. And so we got on well from the word go, because they were there to help us do what we wanted to do. So
and then so they got me to, they helped me to initially to manage just to move myself along the bed sideways, then to get off the bed onto, well, we used the commode because that was handy, so that I could transfer off the bed onto something else. So then, having done that, we used the wheelchair and got me to transfer onto the wheelchair. And then once I'd done that, then we got out of the house with ramps round the back of the house, and then out of the front of the house, and then to the car, and then we practiced getting into the car, and then we practiced it a lot that morning, didn't we? And then that afternoon we got a friend coming for tea, for a cup of tea, and we rang her and said, rather than coming to our house, could we meet you at Coolings, which is the local garden centre? So we straight away capitalised on being able to get out of the house and get somewhere. So that was what we did, and so that was a big success.
Huge liberation to be able to do that and get out and about. Because of course we'd also had, been winter, there'd been lockdowns, there'd been all those other things going on as well. So just to be able to reach the point where you could get in the car and go somewhere was absolutely fantastic, wasn't it? So,
it was. And then they helped me to start negotiating stairs, and they were working hard on my hand and arm, so that and again you sort of don't really, I couldn't believe that I would be able to do like I can do now initially. And I remember Hamish, who was one of the physios, sitting with me and saying, come on, let's turn your hand over. And I thought, you've got to be joking, it's not doing anything. And then he said, come on, just put your hands together and turn the one you can turn. And then he said, really, really think about the other one. And the day I managed to get it to move just a little bit was just so exciting. because I knew then that what I'd been told was actually true, that I could get some function back. So that was what we were doing really. And then, having managed the stairs outside, the steps down from the front door, I then wanted to get back upstairs. And so the OT came and she arranged for extra rails and grab handles and so on. And so then we managed to get me up the stairs. And yeah, so then having got upstairs, then the next thing is that our bedroom is actually then, because it's over the garage, is then down some stairs as well. So having got me upstairs to get me into the bedroom, I then needed to go down a few stairs. And then in fact, and because we wanted to get me into the shower, so they put grab handles in the shower. And then we got my son and his family coming for the weekend. And although I could get up the stairs, the bed that we got was very, very low, and I couldn't get myself out of it. If I could get myself into it, I couldn't get myself off it. And so we told my son that I was still downstairs sleeping, so it would mean that the grandchildren would have to be aware of that and couldn't just come downstairs in the morning. But then we've got a friend who is also an OT, and he came round and looked at the bed and said, oh, you can put raisers under that to make it higher so you'll be able to use it. So he then arranged for that. And so we then slept upstairs for the first time, didn't we? And that was lovely.
In your own bed.
My own bed.
Yeah.
And able to get into the shower.
Yeah, and able to get into the shower the next morning.
Yeah.
So that was a real treat. And so then when the family came down, of course, I was sleeping upstairs. So that was a real success. And again, the physios and the OTs were so helpful. They were a real can-do team, and which was what we needed.
And you're a real can-do pair, but having, your story, when you think about your story, you've got so many parts of it that helped you get to the point you're at now. But a lot of it was your positive attitude, of absolutely no doubt, and people feed off that, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, it worked very much both ways. I mean, I think going that story about the car, I mean, that was the first conversation I had, I think, with Beth, wasn't it? And I expected her to say, I think that would be really, really risky. I'm not sure you'll be able to do that. And she just said, yeah, let's go for it. If that's what you want to do, and I thought, wow, that is so positive, and it's what we wanted to do. So, but the technique of doing it, of breaking it down into those very small steps, so that each step of the way Mary could move in that direction, that's what we wouldn't have known what to do. So you have to put the whole lot together. It's the techniques, it was their can-do attitude, and Mary's desire and my desire to, not to sit back and just be content with what she could or couldn't do, and just accept that was it. And I mean, even now, when Mary's vastly more mobile than she was, I mean, she can cope much better, but it's also really, I think, really important that we just carry on stretching and pushing, because the life that she's living now is still not a normal life, and so she has to carry on doing the hard work and the pushing, and to have the physio and the techniques to be able to push on to regain even more functionality. Your legs much better, and it's getting better more slowly. Your speech, as you can see, is fabulous.
Amazing.
Where she was when you just couldn't say anything, could you?
No.
So,
No, and actually the speech is still improving.
Yeah.
Because something happened on Sunday. Somebody made some comment, and I, without even thinking about it, I'd given them a response, which was just an off-the-cuff remark, which was probably. Then I noticed that I'd been able to do it. So I think that's. And somebody was in church who hadn't been there for 3 weeks, and she said, "Oh, that my speech was much better than when she met me before."
So I guess if you were giving tips to anyone else, Mary, about their journey and how they're doing, and if the clinicians are, obviously everyone's story is very different, but if we think that there is an impairment that the clinical team are telling you hopefully will get better, I guess, what would your message to them be?
You have to believe what you're told, which is very, very hard initially. And I think, as I've already said, you never think it'll happen to you, but when it does, it's very frightening. But in fact, what I was told was true, and the functionality does come back, but you also have to work at it. So rehab works with being told what to do and shown what to do. But also you then have to put in the arm work or the leg work or whatever it is to actually make the progress. But it's very encouraging. As soon as you start to see something happen, then that is a real encouragement. So for us to be able to get out of the house again was just massive. But we didn't then wait and not go out. We actually went out the same afternoon. So you have to capitalize on the gains that you make.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today, and hopefully lots of people will gain some positive tips from you. And Mary was on holiday on the beach with her toes in the water last week, weren't you? So
I certainly was. And in order to get me onto the beach, the physios had me standing on pillows to get used to an uneven and a flexible surface under my feet.
Amazing. All right, we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Ellie.
you.
Bye-bye.